Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to AnnoyingCow Sports. I'm your host, Anthony Mennel, and today we're going to be breaking down the NFC. All right, we're going to jump right into things here. We're going to kick things off with the NFC East. And the first team we're going to talk about, the New York Giants. The Giants were part of probably the biggest trade of the offseason, where they shipped Odell Beckham Jr. and Olivier Vernon out of town. They got some draft picks, and in addition to those draft picks, they got safety Jabril Peppers from the Browns and right guard Kevin Zeitler. I think it definitely is a big move. Kevin Zeitler is one of the best guards in the NFL. They signed wide receiver Golden Tate and free safety Antonio Bethea. In free agency, they did lose Landon Collins, free safety, B.W. Webb at corner, and guard Jamon Brown. So it's going to be a rebuilding year again for New York. They drafted Daniel Jones, 6th overall. He's supposed to be the quarterback of the future, taking over for Eli. He's looked good so far in preseason. The plan seems to be to start Eli this year. This is definitely Eli's last year, without a doubt. I imagine we'll see Daniel Jones before the end of the year. I actually think it'll be probably about week 7. So looking at the schedule, that game's against the Cardinals. The 2 games before that, they got the Vikings and the Patriots. 2 good defenses. I think you're going to see Eli struggle. Their early schedule isn't super rough, but I mean overall, I don't expect them to be a very good team this year. You're going to see a lot of struggles from Eli. I think the Cardinals will be a good game. The week before, they play the Patriots on Thursday night. So it just gives you, it's a few extra days of practice with Jones at the ones. So like I was saying, offensively, they lost OBJ, one of the best wide receivers in the game. And all they did to counteract that was to bring in Golden Tate. They're not even the same skill set at wide receiver. Golden Tate's this kind of underneath slot guy. They do have Sterling Shepard. Shepard has a broken thumb, I believe it is. He's been playing with a cast. Pretty sure he's gonna be good to go week 1, but that'll be a bit of a limiting factor. Also, Golden Tate is suspended for the first 4 games due to PEDs. On offense, I do expect Evan Ingram, their tight end, to have definitely a better year this year than he did last. Kind of regressed last year after having a pretty solid rookie campaign. Especially when Daniel Jones takes over. Tight ends and running backs historically are the safety valve for young quarterbacks. Obviously, they have Saquon Barkley, who's one of the best pass catching backs in the league. He'll see a lot of action, but I believe Evan Ingram will be that other safety valve for Daniel Jones. Defensively, I don't think they'll be great. They did go a little defensive heavy in the draft after taking Daniel Jones, but I just think it's going to be a rebuilding rough season for the Giants. I got them going 3-13. All right. Now on to the Eagles. All right. So they added some offensive weapons this offseason. They traded for Jordan Howard from the Bears. They also traded for Deshaun Jackson from the Bucks. They brought in Malik Jackson, defensive tackle. I believe they re-signed him. And then cornerback Ronald Darby. They did lose Golden Tate. Granted, Golden Tate really didn't have much of an impact till kind of in the playoffs. He was a midseason acquisition last year. It didn't really have much of effect, I don't think, on the offense. They lost linebacker Jordan Hicks, traded away defensive end Michael Bennett, and then they did lose one of their big ones was losing Nick Foles in the offseason. Granted, just the backup quarterback, but just the presence of Nick Foles, I think his loss will be felt a little bit, but not too much. So I think Carson Wentz, as long as he can stay healthy, I know obviously health is always, any team can, or just about any team can be great if they can stay healthy all year. It's football, nobody stays healthy all year. But at the end of last year, he had some back issues. But I think in 2017, he had an MVP campaign going until he tore his ACL. I think he's going to get back to that MVP form. With the addition of Djax, they already have Alshon Jeffrey, big, good number one wide receiver. And obviously Zach Ertz has been, Carson's security blanket his whole career. They also drafted running back Miles Sanders. Right now it looks like it may be a split between Sanders and Howard, but Sanders has looked good in the preseason, and he's got the 3-down skill set and could take over there. I think that's... Sorry, just checking my notes here. Yeah, I think defensively, they'll be about the same. But I think you're going to see a huge jump for them offensively compared to last year. It'll be a very similar, I think, to 2017 when they did end up going on to win the Super Bowl. I have the Eagles winning the division and going 13-3. All right, on to the Cowboys. It really wouldn't be the NFL without the Cowboys and Jerry Jones stirring up some drama. There has been the Zeke holdout has been the big news, along with Melvin Gordon. Now their situations are a little different. Melvin Gordon is in his 5th-year option of his rookie deal. Zeke is in his 4th year of his rookie deal, and there's still that 5th-year team option. He's come out and said he won't play without a new deal. I think it was last week, said the Cowboys had offered him a contract that would make him the second highest paid running back, in between, just below Todd Gurley, but above Le'Veon Bell. I believe I saw a report today that the wording was they offered him a contract in the Todd Gurley range. To me, that sounds like they didn't offer him more than Todd Gurley, because then they would have just came out and said they offered him a contract that would make him the highest paid running back in the NFL. I think they just, got a little closer to the Gurley number. I don't think Zeke's going to sign a contract that doesn't make him the highest paid running back in the NFL. Now, that also being said, because it's the 4th year in his contract, he's going to at some point have to show up, just like Melvin Gordon, to be able to occur a free agent year. So I believe whether that's like 8 games or 10 games, somewhere in there, he's going to have to show up eventually. And then on top of that, he'll probably have another year. But I think what really made it come to even more of a standstill was at one point Jerry Jones was asked about Zeke, and his comment was, "Zeke who?" I think that really got under Zeke's skin. He got a little offended by that. Because Zeke is really what runs that offense. That being said, if he does miss time, the running backs there currently on the depth chart, you have Tony Pollard. He's looked good in the preseason. Jerry Jones has really talked him up. You have Alfred Morris. Really kind of just seems like a veteran presence there. He's been around a while. But he has been in that system before. I believe it was 2-3 years ago he was in Dallas as the backup. So he knows the system, and it could get him some time early. And if Zeke's not gone long, you may see Alfred Morris really as the number one guy there. They also have Darius Jackson. He's the 3rd guy on the depth chart at the moment. But I'd expect them to kind of take that running back by committee approach. Pollard may lead the way, especially with as much hype that Jerry Jones has given him. But I do expect it to be more of a running back by committee. Now, some more offseason news for them is Dak Prescott is in the 4th and final year of his deal. He was a 3rd-round draft pick, I believe, So I believe it's first and second rounders come with that 5th-year option. Rookie contracts are really set in stone based on where you're placed, really dictates the years and money on which you'll get based on the current CBA. Um, it is said they offered him a contract to become the 5th highest paid quarterback, tying Matt Ryan, who's currently the 5th highest. Now, the interesting part would be if they end up striking a deal with Zeke. They did just sign Jalen Smith, linebacker. So they spent money there. They may spend money on Zeke before the season starts. If they were to franchise tag him, this is where things would get probably more costly. So the 5th highest paid quarterback, Matt Ryan, right now makes about $30 million a year, which is about what they're trying to offer him. Now, if he were to get franchise tagged, there's 2 types of franchise tags. There's non-exclusive and exclusive. So a non-exclusive, which would be, so I pulled this from an article. I cited the article somewhere here. It was on CBS. Where was it? Sorry. I want to give credit to the person I'm getting the information from. Oh, yeah. So it was an article on CBS by Joel Corey. So the non-exclusive franchise tag, quoting, yes, would be in the neighborhood of $27 million, and that's projecting the salary cap to go up to $200 million next offseason. And then if they were to franchise tag him a second time, basically the CBA mandates that it goes up 20% in 2020, which would get to about $32 million. Now, non-exclusives you typically see on non-quarterbacks, because the exclusive version, which prohibits Prescott from soliciting other offer sheets from other teams, which you typically see used on quarterbacks. So, but when that happens, you get paid more. So the exclusive designation would be the average of the top 5 quarterbacks that year. So in 2020, which projects to be about $32.2 million. And then again, if they were to do it a second year, which is common, you saw that with Kirk Cousins, it would be a 20% raise, which would go to $38 million a year. Now, from Dak's point of view, he's made, I believe, under $1 million in base salary every year in the NFL because he fell to the 3rd round. Obviously, he wants to maximize his money, and this would actually do it. So he may also be seeking, top quarterback money. I don't think he's quite worth top quarterback money. I think in that Matt Ryan 30 to 35 million range, maybe. I believe that's approaching Kirk Cousins type money, depending on how the guarantees and everything shakes out. In addition to that, you also have Amari Cooper, who's about to be a free agent as well. They traded a 1st-round draft pick for him this last year. You'd expect them to definitely want to secure him as well. Otherwise, it's kind of a waste of a 1st-round draft pick there. But besides all the drama, offensively, they re-sign Tavon Austin. They sign Randall Cobb. They did lose Cole Beasley and Allen Hurns. I think Cole Beasley was probably the biggest contributor there. But Randall Cobb will fill that slot role nicely. Obviously, you still got Amari Cooper on the outside. And then you got 2nd-year wide receiver Michael Gallup. I expect to make a pretty big leap in this offense, especially Amari Cooper's had some foot injuries here early in training camp. Hasn't really hinted at missing time, but he also has a history of being real, I guess, roller coastery, if you will, where he'll have a game where he goes for like 202, and then he'll have another game where, he's got like 40 yards. That's it. I think Gallup could be that middle ground where he just kind of stays consistent for him. They also brought Jason Witten back. They didn't really have a presence at tight end. I don't know how much Witten will really help the offense play-wise, like yardage-wise. I think he'll be a good he's probably still a good blocking tight end. Definitely a good locker room guy. Is a cliche term there. So one of their O linemen, Travis Frederick, he missed all of last year due to some health issues. It's looking like he's on track to start week 1. Cowboys have had one of the best O lines in the last few years, and that'll definitely keep things going. Defensively, I think they'll just continue to get better. They added to the defense in the second round. They didn't have a first round pick this year at D tackle. And then you got both their Jalen Smith and I'm going to mispronounce his name, but it's Van Descher. He's going into his second year at linebacker. But both of them really came into their own late last year, and along with Sean Lee at linebacker, I think it's going to be a real good defensive group. I think they'll be a good team. I think if they do miss Zeke for some time, that'll hurt them. And then, I don't know, I expect the Eagles to be very good this year, which hurts the Cowboys a little bit. I got the Cowboys going 10-6 and missing the playoffs at 10-6. So, all right. To round out the division, the Washington Redskins. The Redskins have just really had a lot of injuries over the last few years, and probably the biggest one of all, and it bled into this season now, was the Alex Smith breaking his leg week 10. It was an injury similar to Joe Theismann, former Redskins quarterback who had his career ended by this injury. It's hopeful that it doesn't happen to Alex Smith, but he had a few setbacks after the surgery. I believe there was an infection issue. It's not looking great. He's expected to miss this entire season. They did draft Dwayne Haskins in the first round at quarterback. They have Colt McCoy at quarterback as well, but he's also returning from a leg injury that he had late in the season. And they traded in the offseason for Case Keenum, which, as you probably already know, I believe it was yesterday, the Redskins announced that Case Keenum will go into the year as their starting quarterback. I haven't seen the depth chart on whether it's going to be Haskins or McCoy as the backup. Wouldn't surprise me if they go McCoy, at least to start. But again, a struggling team with a high drafted rookie quarterback. It won't take long for the fans and everyone to start asking, when is this rookie going to get some playing time? We already suck. I don't know if it would be for the best. I believe Haskins still has to develop a little bit more compared to some of the other rookies. But wouldn't surprise me if you see him at some point this season. Also, you have second-year running back Darius Geis, who tore his ACL last year. Preseason, I believe it was week 1 or 2 last year. He played in preseason game 3, looked pretty good. I believe he had 11 carries for about 44 yards. Pretty solid, about 4 yards, exactly 4 yards a carry. Pretty good behind what isn't a great offensive line. So, whether or not he'll be the starter, though, I haven't heard. They still have Adrian Peterson there. Adrian Peterson had a great year last year. Maybe more of a split to start the season, but I think by the end of the year, as long as Geis continues to get healthy, he'll be the lead back there. They don't have much at wide receiver, so their top 3 wide receivers are Paul Richardson, Trey Quinn, and Josh Doxson. And I just saw today that it's possible that Josh Dotson? You would think I wouldn't butcher that name of all names. He's in jeopardy of not even making the roster. He has underperformed I believe he was a high draft pick. This might be year 3 or 4 for him. He's really just underperformed his entire career, and he's in jeopardy of getting cut. And as is, I'd say this is probably one of the worst, if not the worst, wide receiver core in the NFL. So at offensive line, they've definitely struggled with some injuries there in the past. But coming into the season, PFF has them ranked 14th. But that being said, their left tackle Trent Williams, who's the best offensive lineman on that team, is holding out of camp. So from an article by the Washington Post by Les Carpenter, has a quote where Williams has said that he no longer trusts the organization and its medical staff over several issues, including the Redskins' handling of a benign tumor on his head in the past offseason. Associates of Williams have said he does not want to play for the team again. He's asked for a trade or for them to pay him more. Both of those requests have been declined by the team. Now, like I said, Alex Smith had a bit of a setback with his returning from that leg injury where he had an infection. There was also one Darius Geis had last year recovering from that. And then it sounds like there's just been some mistrust with the doctors. It may just be a bad turn of events or a series of unfortunate events, if you will. But as the season grows closer, you would think he would return eventually. At some point, you'd expect him to. Again, you got to at least be on the team for a little bit to be able to have that year count towards free agency and move on if they're dead set on not trading him. That being said, another down year for the Redskins is what I expect, and I could see them firing Jay Gruden, and eventually just going into full rebuild mode. And if you do that, you're probably going to trade what veteran assets you have. That seems to, at least that's been a theme. The Raiders did it. The Browns have done it. So trading Williams away could benefit the team there. Like I said, I don't expect much from them this year. Kind of a below average defense. Offense that's not great. I don't know if Case Keenum can return to the 2017 Minnesota Vikings Case Keenum. I have the Redskins going a very measly 2-14. All right, some questions here before we go to the next division. Oh, CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. It's between the owners and the Players Association, which I found out via Twitter from a player that the Players Union, I guess it is actually mandated to be a thing by the owners. A lot of the players aren't a fan, but I guess I think it's helped them in the past. I know right now there's a lot of, I think actually this year might be the last year on that current CBA. There's been some talks. They're trying to avoid a potential lockout, which almost happened. I think it's probably been 5+ years now. But I know right now the big thing is this is a little off topic, sorry. But the owners want more games in the regular season. A lot of them are pushing for a 17 or an 18 game season. I heard that there's the potential to expand the playoffs, which I don't know. I think the NFL has probably the best playoff system out of all the major sports. I guess if they were to expand it, maybe add 2 more wild card teams. But in return, the players, from what I've heard and read, their big talking points. Obviously, if they're going to play more, they want more money, and a lot of that comes from revenue sharing. Right now, the players get a portion of TV money. I know some players, if not all players, get a portion of the revenue from like their jersey sales and things like that. And then I know they want to relax the some of the drug testing. I know the big one is they don't want the NFL to test for marijuana anymore. I know that's a big one among a lot of players. Sorry to go off on a little tangent there. Yeah, no team logos. I was ill prepared today and didn't get them together. All right. Any other questions before I move on to the NFC North? Oh yeah. Glad little typo there. Yeah. I kind of forgot it was Tuesday. Also, it happens. It's one of those days, you know. All right. Going to. Oh wait. I'll ask you. Remind me to ask you about you calling me earlier after the stream. Or I guess I might as well address it now. Did it work for you? Was it the time? No? Damn. All right. Sorry. All right. Yeah, sorry. Moving on to the NFC North. We're going to kick things off with the Bears. All right. So the Bears had the heartbreaking loss to a fantastic season under first-year head coach Matt Nagy due to the double doink. I don't know. There's a video floating around with some Bears fans. Apparently, I assume it's fake, but there's a little stuffed bear that looks like he's kicking, and if you squeeze him, it goes double doink. And allegedly, they're selling them in Green Bay. I think that's awesome. So, due to that, that's really haunted the Bears offseason. So, at one point, they brought in 8 kickers to battle it out in training camp. At the time, 2 of them made it out, Eddie Pinheiro and Elliott Fry. Elliott Fry was actually signed from the AAF. I believe Fry was actually cut. Let me Google that real quick. Sorry. Yes, they did end up releasing him, and then he actually got signed by the Ravens. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Some last minute Googling I should have done. But Pinheiro is still there. I hope I'm saying that right. He actually last preseason game hit a 58-yarder. Pretty much probably sealed that job up. You know, unless Carly Lloyd, who's been seen kicking field goals in some training camp, she apparently had gotten some teams interested. Carly Lloyd being a U.S. women's soccer player. So, besides the kicker battle, so you got Mitch Trubisky. He's going into year 3, but year 2 under Matt Nagy's offense. Matt Nagy coming over from Kansas City last year under Andy Reid. One of those guys that really kind of gets overshadowed by the Sean McVay offensive genius and his, anyone McVay remotely touches or breathes on is an offensive genius. Matt Nagy has really turned that offense around in Chicago. So I think one big question mark is Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson is their number 1 wide receiver. So a few years ago, it was 2015. He had a career year where he had 80 catches for 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns. And then he kind of, in 2016, kind of regressed a little bit. He had 73 catches for 833 yards and 6 touchdowns. And then he tore his ACL. Last year was his first year back from that and his first year in Chicago. He only had 55 catches for 754 yards and 4 touchdowns. Really, he had a better catch rate this year than he had since his rookie year. But I think just acclimating to the first year in that offense, that and Mitch Trubisky still being a young quarterback, you're really going to need, I think, Mitch to take a big jump in year 3 for Robinson to really show the number 1 wide receiver prowess that he has in the past. I don't know. I feel like Trubisky may be still a little inconsistent, at least as a passer. But the hope is obviously for Bears fans that they don't, or that he does get more consistent. So basically what led that team last year was their defense. Defense was top in the league in just about all categories. I will throw a little caution out there, and I think they're going to regress. And I have a great example in the Jacksonville Jaguars of last year. So, where they regressed the most was in sacks and turnovers. So, in 2017, the Jags had 33 turnovers as a defense, and then in 2018, they only had 17. Also, they had 55 sacks in 2017. That went down to 37 in 2018. So, and the Jags defensively, they only went from second to fifth in yards. I don't think you'll see a big, maybe yards drop defensively. Points, you may see a drop, probably see a little bit of a drop as well. But last year, the Bears led the league in turnovers with 36, 27 of which were interceptions, and they were third in the league in sacks with 50. I definitely expect both those numbers to decline, and it's just not going to be as ferocious and as terrifying of a defense as last year. I think the Bears are going to have an above average year, but probably not a great year for the Bears fans. I think they're going to go 9-7 and miss the playoffs. Yeah, probably definitely too early for merch. Yeah. All right, moving on to the Green Bay Packers. The Packers made a coaching change in the offseason, hiring head coach Matt LaFleur. There were several years of Mike McCarthy there, but it was felt there needed to be a change. So Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans last year. So he's worked under Kyle Shanahan on several occasions throughout his career, and he used Kyle Shanahan's known for that two-back system. Everyone. It's funny is when he was in Atlanta, you had the Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. It's probably the best example of that two-back system. And Matt LaFleur used it last year with Derrick Henry and Deion Lewis. Granted, towards the end of the year, it was more Derrick Henry, less Deion Lewis, but he still used him as a third down back, Deion Lewis. Granted, Derrick Henry doesn't have the pass-catching skill set at all. Now, I do expect them to run the ball more. So last year, they had 333 rushing attempts, which was dead last in the NFL. I fully expect that to go up. I believe Aaron Rodgers has come out and endorsed wanting to run the ball more. They have Aaron Jones there. Aaron Jones, it averages 5.5 yards a carry over the first two seasons, which is phenomenal. Packers have a pretty good offensive line. That definitely helps. But you'd expect them to step up the pace, especially Matt LaFleur with the Titans last year. They ran the ball 454 times, which is 9th in the NFL. Definitely expect them to have an uptick in the running game. They did make a lot of moves defensively. They brought in outside linebacker Zadarius Smith, outside linebacker Preston Smith, and free safety Adrian Amos. They did lose Clay Matthews III at outside linebacker, defensive end Mike Daniels, and linebacker Jack Ryan. But in the draft, they addressed defense as well, getting edge rusher Rashad Gary from Michigan in the first round. Should be a monster on that defensive line. I think the Packers are going to improve a lot this year. I think their defense will take a slight step forward, but I expect the offense to be much better. Running the ball is going to allow them to have more balance. They have Devontae Adams, fantastic wide receiver one. You got Geronimo Allison and Marquez Valdez-Scantling at wide receiver as the 2 and 3 wide receiver. Both just another year with Rodgers. Valdez-Scantling, this is going to be a second year, and I believe it's going to be third year for Geronimo. Just more time with Rodgers. I think you're going to see a huge, huge uptick in offense. And I got the Packers going 13-3 and getting a wild card spot. All right, next to the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings made an OC change late last year to Kevin Stefanski. He's going to be the OC full-time coming into this year. And the big thing is head coach Mike Zimmer, he wants to run the ball. He's kind of an old-school philosophy guy. He wants to run the ball and play great defense. So they brought, which is interesting when you paid Kirk Cousins a lot of money, you have one of the best wide receiver duos in the league in Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, but that's what they want to do. Now they brought in Kevin Stefanski as the offensive coordinator last 3 games of the season. In that time, they went 2-1, which was pretty good. But if you look at it, their wins were against the Dolphins and Lions, 2 teams that were at the bottom of the NFL, and their one loss was to the Bears, one of the best teams in the NFL. So it's kind of hard to judge with such a small sample size. So I think one thing that hurt them last year, one reason I think they didn't run the ball as much, yes, John DeFilippo, who was their offensive coordinator, is a very pass-happy offensive coordinator, but Dalvin Cook was hurt for a lot of the year. They're starting running back. When you lose your starting running back, makes it difficult to have effective running game. They also had some bad O-line play. I believe there's some injuries on the O-line. The offensive line was not good. If they can improve there, obviously it's going to help the run game. And yeah, the run does help open up the pass as well, typically. I think the offense is going to improve mightily. Just another year with Kirk Cousins in the offense, and just another year of chemistry with Thielen and Diggs. He's been using Kyle Rudolph a little bit more. He's been a little bit more involved in the offense than he was last year so far in the offseason and preseason. That'll be a big help. And obviously if Dalvin Cook can stay healthy all year, in the preseason game 3 early on, he had that 85-yard touchdown run. Already looking like he's ready to tear up some defenses. The O-line is the issue. They've addressed it through the draft and free agency. PFF has them ranked 25th coming into the season. It's an improvement from last year where they finished the year 29th. So hopefully they can improve. Defense, they normally have a pretty good defense. It was definitely a step back from your typical Vikings defense over the last few years. But I think in the offseason, they definitely rectified that. And I expect the Vikings to be back to your typical Vikings defense. I have the Vikings also going 13-3. I have them finishing with a better divisional record, winning the division over the Packers. All right. On to the Detroit Lions. So it's going to be an uphill battle for the Lions this year. I think this is one of the best, if not the best, division in football. I have the other 3 teams all above 500. It's not going to be a good year for the Lions. I don't think they'll win a single game in the division. And because of that, you're going to see Matt Patricia pretty quickly on the hot seat. Is the rebuild not quite going to plan? Matt Ryan was dealing with some back injuries all of last year. Sorry, did I say not Matt Ryan? Matt Stafford was dealing with back injuries all last year, which hurt the offense. But I don't know. I don't see a whole lot of improvement there. they still have good weapons with Marvin Jones and um, Kenny Galladay. Um, but I think losing Golden Tate is going to be a big thing. They traded him away midway last year, and you definitely saw that hurt the offense. Part of it might have been the injuries, but I think losing Golden Tate is going to be a big deal. At running back, they're probably the brightest spot offensively is Kerryon Johnson at running back. The only concern is whether or not he will get all three downs worth of work. Seems to be coming out on third down, and C.J. Anderson's in town, so he may siphon some touchdowns away. And then their defense isn't great. I just don't think it's going to be a good year for the Lions. I got the Lions going 3-13. All right. On to the NFC South. I'm typoing everywhere here. All right, the NFC South. Going to kick things off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucks this offseason made a head coaching change. They convinced Bruce Arians to come out of retirement. The quarterback whisperer, Bruce Arians. Hoping he can turn that magic on to Jameis Winston and turn him into the franchise quarterback the Bucs drafted him to be. So this offseason, they did lose some offensive guys. They lost backup / starting quarterback Ryan Fitzmagic. Lost defensive tackle Gerald McCoy. No, that's defense. I just said offensive weapons. Wide receiver Adam Humphries left in the offseason, and they traded Deshaun Jackson to the Eagles. They brought in wide receiver Bashad Perryman. He'll probably slot in as the number 3 wide receiver behind Mike Evans, who's just a dominant number 1 wide receiver, and Chris Godwin, going to be the number 2 wide receiver. I really think that this will probably be a pretty good breakout year for Godwin. So on Winston and Bruce Arians being the quarterback whisperer. So Bruce Arians he's gotten the best out of pretty much all the quarterbacks he's worked with. He worked with Big Ben when he was in Pittsburgh as the OC. He was the offensive coordinator in Cleveland. And early in Tim Couch's career, he had saw some of his better years, even behind a crappy offensive line. At one point, he was in Indianapolis working with Peyton Manning. And really, his most recent one was when he was in Arizona, really revived Carson Palmer's career. And also there was a year where Palmer was hurt, and they were using Drew Stanton and Skelton, I believe was the last name of another quarterback there. But they had a host of backup quarterbacks, and Bruce was able to get the best out of him in his offense. He's definitely got an aggressive style of offense. So with Winston, one issue he has struggled with was interceptions, which might continue under Bruce Arians. Again, a very aggressive style. In Carson Palmer's first year, he had an uptick in interceptions. Winston averages 14.5 interceptions throughout his career. And he throws only 22 touchdowns. Not a great pick to touchdown ratio. Again, I think you may see an uptick in interceptions. You'll definitely see an uptick in passing touchdowns this year from him. This is a contract year for Jameis Winston. He's in the 5th year option of his rookie deal, and it's really he needs to perform this year if he wants to get that big money deal and prove that he is the franchise quarterback. Last year, Fitzpatrick started due to a suspension that Winston had. He had to earn his starting job back, then he lost it, and then he got it back again. It was just a real back and forth mess. That's not going to happen this year. He'll be the starter from day one. And I think Bruce Arians will definitely help improve the offense. So last year, last year they were third in total yards. They led the league in passing, but they were 29th in rushing. Yeah, maybe he shouldn't suck. Yeah, that might help. So they were 29th in rushing. I think the hope is that it'll improve. You got Ronald Jones going into his second year, Peyton Barber, I believe Andre Ellington. They brought Andre Ellington in as well. Bruce Arians' guy from his days with the Cardinals. But they'll definitely still be one of the best passing offenses. Granted, it's can't improve when you're the best in the league, but they'll be at the top of passing. I think their big thing is they will improve as a rushing offense, and that'll definitely obviously help the offense overall. As I mentioned before, not only Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, they got O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate at tight end, two great offensive weapons there. Their biggest issue is defensively. Last season, they were 27th in total yards and 31st in points. They did go heavy defensively in the draft. Their first 5 picks were all on the defensive end, highlighted really by in the first round taking Devin White, middle linebacker from LSU, to help hopefully bring that defense together and become a stud defense of the future. I don't think you're going to see that much improvement defensively this year, just with all the young additions, new coaching staff. But maybe next year, I still have them going a decent 5-11 this year. Not great, but with a young team, it's not terrible, I guess. All right, on to the New Orleans Saints. So, Saints are coming off a year where they were robbed from a Super Bowl appearance on a pass interference no call, which was very heartbreaking. And then the year before that, they had the Minneapolis Miracle against the Vikings. It's been a rough run in the playoffs the last 2 years. And really, the Saints are just trying to put one more together to get another Lombardi trophy before Drew Brees hangs it up. So, they had a top 10 offense last year, and they really didn't lose much offensively. Where they did lose players, I think they replaced them with players that were as good, if not better, for the most part. They did lose Mark Ingram, but they brought in Latavius Murray. I think Latavius Murray will fill Mark Ingram's role just fine as the backup running back there with Alvin Kamara. Ben Watson left. Ben Watson wasn't really utilized much last year. They bring in Jared Cook. Jared Cook's coming off a year where he led the Raiders in receiving. I think that's a real upgrade at tight end there. Just another weapon for Drew Brees to use. Now, where I don't think they necessarily got better or may not have an equal replacement was their center, Max Unger, retired kind of unexpectedly. They brought in Nick Easton at center, and then in the second round, which was their first pick, they drafted Eric McCoy, center from Texas A&M, to help try and fill that role. So far, the depth chart's saying Eric McCoy is leading the way there. Definitely, one of the more, with that and left tackle, probably your two most important offensive line positions. But for the most part, they're kind of just relying on running it back offensively. They've been that close the last 2 years. Just need to take that extra step. Defensively, they struggled a little bit early, but in the second half, they were fantastic. I think they're gonna be able to continue that into 2019, and quite honestly, offensively, they have the offensive firepower to run with any team in the league. Even your teams that I think will have really good offenses this year, with like the Eagles, the Packers, the Chiefs. I think they can win a shootout against anybody, and I think they have a better defense than some of those other high-flying offensive teams. I have them going 13-3 and winning the division. All right. Going on to the Carolina Panthers. So last season, the Panthers got off to a hot start. They started the season 6-2, but they ended up finishing 7-9. And their lone win after that 6-2 start came in Week 17 when both the Panthers and the Saints were playing their backups. So, not it's a W's a W, but it was a real struggle after Week 8 for the Panthers. Now, one of the concerns coming into the season is Cam Newton. He had his second shoulder surgery in 3 years. This one was more of a cleanup. The first one was the repair. This one was just a cleanup. Obviously, he's projected to start week 1, not really have any shoulder issues. The issue with him came in preseason game 3 when he suffered a mid-foot sprain. With, I believe, head coach Rivera is his last name. Forget his first. Ron Rivera, there we go. Came out today and said there's no doubt that he'll be ready week 1. They're really hoping to have, an uptick in offense. Christian McCaffrey was dominant last year as that bell cow running back. They got DJ Moore, wide receiver, coming in on his second year, and third-year wide receiver Curtis Samuel. Both expected to kind of break out at wide receiver. I know the big thing with Samuel is this is really, he didn't really play wide receiver until coming to the NFL. In college, he was that hybrid kind of running back wide receiver combo, kind of like he played at Ohio State under Urban Meyer. It was kind of that Percy Harvin role when Urban was down at Florida, but he seems to have transitioned well into that wide receiver role finally coming into year number 3. They were pretty middle of the pack defensively. They're definitely looking to improve. They added defensively in the first round, brought in edge rusher Brian Burns, addressed the offensive line in the second round. I think they're going to be. My feeling on the Panthers is kind of meh. Like, I don't think they're a bad team. I just don't think they're a good team. I don't think they're a good team. Nothing really gets me. Sorry. Nothing really gets me excited about the Panthers. I have them going 8-8 this year. Probably not the outcome they're hoping for. I guess it's probably 3-4 years now since they had that Super Bowl run. But 8-8, not great. Better than most. All right, to round out the division, the Atlanta Falcons. It's crazy to think that just 2 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl, or sorry, three years ago now, I guess, where they were in the Super Bowl, blowing a huge lead. But they've had some injury troubles since then that have really hindered them. Devontae Freeman, their starting running back, missed most of last year. And then defensively, they were just decimated on defense with injuries. I definitely expect their defense to improve. They were bottom of the league in most all categories last year. Really only one way to go but up at that point. They addressed defense a little bit in free agency. Through the draft, they actually addressed the offensive line a lot. But the offensive line has looked shaky in the preseason. So not great there. The offense, even with a shaky offensive line, has been good in the past. You got Julio Jones. You had Calvin Ridley. If you get a healthy season from a Devonta Freeman, I don't know. I think they'll be decent offensively. That offensive line will probably hold them back a little bit. And that with the defense, I don't think they'll drastically improve. Obviously, staying healthy will help, but I don't see a huge change there defensively. And I have the Falcons going 6-10. All right. On to the final division, the AFC West. All right, we're going to start things off here with the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks, it's going to be another year of run early, run often under second-year offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. So Brian Schottenheimer, his style of play is just like his father, Marty Schottenheimer. He plays what's been coined as Marty Ball, which Marty Ball is you focus on the run game and then you use the passing game to further help the running game. Last year, they led the league in team rushing yards. They were second in the league in attempts per game. They were less than one attempt per game behind Baltimore, who finished first. And they were sixth in the league in rushing yards per attempt, running at 4.7 a clip. I think they'll continue to run and be effective running. You got Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, two good running backs. And then, not to mention at quarterback, you have Russell Wilson, one of the best in the game. Very efficient. Now, that being said, with running the ball more, they've been passing less. He saw a dip in yards last year, but he actually threw for a career-high 35 touchdowns last season. He only averages about 28 a year. I'd expect that to go down. He was crazy efficient throwing to Tyler Lockett last year. I believe he had a perfect passer rating in pass attempts to Tyler Lockett. Obviously, you don't expect that to continue. You do expect some regression from Russell Wilson. But you also saw him run the ball less last year. You may see that go up a little bit more. I think, the defense was pretty middle of the pack. They definitely took a step back last year compared to in the past when they've been a top 10 defense. I think they have the potential to get back to that top 10 defense. I think offensively, they'll run the ball, they'll wear people out, and then if they do need to pass, if they find themselves behind, they have the offense to do it with Russell Wilson at quarterback, Tyler Lockett at wide receiver. A little shaky after that, but I think DK Metcalf, rookie wide receiver, I think by the end of the season he'll come on strong there towards the end. I have the Seahawks playing very well, going 12-4. But I do have them as a wild card team, not winning the division at 12-4. Okay. On to the San Francisco 49ers. So last year, Jimmy Garoppolo, their starting quarterback, tore his ACL early in the year and really just derailed the entire season. What was high hopes, supposed to be a good season for them. They traded for him 2 years ago now. And he played well towards the end of the year. And, last year was going to be the year. Now, that's moved to this year. Kyle Shanahan historically has great offenses. One issue he does have, in my opinion, is they don't really have a true number one wide receiver. They got George Kittle at tight end, who's really the number one pass-catching option. But Kittle and Garoppolo, when they were on the field together, Garoppolo didn't utilize the tight end much. I expect that to change, obviously, after Kittle's breakout year. But, he may not use them as much as Kittle was utilized last year. Now, with the wide receivers, so what was kind of in the offseason, what seemed to be the way things were going was Dante Pettis, coming into year 2, was going to take over as that wide receiver 1 role. But he was playing late in the game in preseason 3, And Kyle Shanahan came out after the game and said he's still trying to earn a role on this team and show he's capable of doing so consistently, which I don't know if that's some sort of motivational technique, if he's just not performing well. Um, it sounds to me like he's fighting for a roster spot, but then if you go and you look at the depth chart, him and Marquise Goodwin are labeled as your top two wide receivers. And that's the thing is, after Pettis on the depth chart, you have Marquise Goodwin, who's really more of a field stretcher and has struggled to stay healthy in his career. They drafted Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurd. Historically, rookie wide receivers aren't great. Second half of the season, they're definitely better, but it's really that year two jump that, they were expecting from Pettis in this year to become that wide receiver one. I think that's going to hold the offense back a little bit. They're just going to really lack that wide receiver that on third down when you need somebody to get open, he's going to get open. Yes, they got Kittle, but I think they really need. Hopefully, Pettis does develop into that wide receiver one that they need, but we'll see. Defensively, they had a top 15 unit last year. They would go out and they trade for D Ford. They draft Nick Bosa this year. I think that D line is going to be very good. And a good defensive line helps the secondary look better. I'm not very high in the Niners this year. I have them going 5-11. All right, the St. Louis Rams. Sorry, the LA Rams. They'll forever be the St. Louis Rams to me. There wasn't much change for the Rams this offseason. They're definitely just kind of trying to run things back like they were last year. They lose in the Super Bowl. They felt they were that close. They're really just hoping to do it again. They added some defensive pieces in free agency with Clay Matthews, Eric Weddle, and they re-signed Dante Fowler. They did lose Ndamukong Suh at D-tackle and linebacker Mark Barron, but they added through the draft as well. They were the 14th ranked passing defense and the 23rd ranked rushing defense last year. Obviously, you hope that rushing defense improves. Losing Suh is going to hurt on that D-line, but obviously when you got Aaron Donald at defensive tackle, you're going to be all right there. Like I said, offensively, not much has changed really. They bring Blake Bortles in as the backup quarterback. A little bit of turnover on that O-line, but nothing major. Their biggest thing is, will Todd Gurley stay healthy, and are they going to limit his touches? It seems like they're going to potentially limit his touches, rotate in Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson more, just to try and keep Gurley fresh so they don't have an incident where they're really not utilizing him in the playoffs. One reason I think they feel they can just kind of keep things as is offensively is Cooper Kupp tore his ACL mid-season last year. He's expected to be ready to go week 1, but his presence was definitely missed down the stretch of the regular season and into the playoffs. He's a red zone threat and really seems to be one of Jared Goff's favorite targets. That being said, I think all three Rams wide receivers, Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp, all great wide receivers. Probably the best trio in the NFL there. Jared Goff, I think he'll improve another year in McVay's system. And I think they're going to have one of the best offenses in the league. I think you're going to see a little bit of improvement on that defense. And I have the Rams going 13-3 and winning the division. All right. The final team, the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals made a coaching change this offseason. They bring in Cliff Kingsbury as the head coach. He was the head coach at Texas Tech and then I believe offensive coordinator at USC. He brings in the air raid offense that you've seen in college for a while now. He actually played quarterback in the air raid system under Mike Leach at Texas Tech, and then he's basically ever since then been kind of a quarterbacks coach, an offensive coordinator, where he's been the used the air raid system. He brings in an experienced defensive coordinator in Vance Joseph. He was the head coach for the Broncos last year. One of the top defensive guys a few years ago, hence why he got that head coaching job. And with the first overall pick, they drafted Heisman winner Kyler Murray, a player who he does have some experience in that air raid style system. You expect that to help. And last year they finished dead last in total yards, passing yards, rushing yards, and points. All major categories just dead last. There's really only one way to go, and that's up. Their offensive line is a concern. PFF has them ranked 30th going into the season. Obviously not good. But I think, you'll see probably some quick passes to try and help mitigate that poor offensive line. It'll improve. Obviously, like I said, there's nowhere to go but up. They also brought in some rookie wide receivers, Andy Isabella, Hakeem Butler, Keyshawn Johnson. Hakeem Butler is going to start the year on the IR, unfortunately. But I think those rookie wide receivers will help. They also brought in Michael Crabtree, who played in the air raid system in college. Just kind of another veteran guy to go with Larry Fitzgerald there, wide receiver. And I think David Johnson will improve as well in this offense. Now, defense last year, they had a fantastic passing defense. They were fourth in passing, but they were 32nd in rushing, dead last. And I think one thing that hurt them is a defense overall is their offense was so poor last year that they spent a lot of time on the field, and a lot of times teams were just trying to run the clock out. They were running more than they were passing. They did go out and add some defensive players. They added Jordan Hicks at linebacker, Darius Fallon at defensive tackle, and Terrell Suggs at outside linebacker to hopefully help that defense get better. I think under Vance Joseph, he'll help turn that defense around. That being said, I still don't expect them to be great. I have the Cardinals going 4-12. All right, I will do a rundown now, what I got playoff-wise for the NFC. So I have the Eagles as the 1 seed. I have the Saints as the 2. Vikings as the 3 seed. Rams as the 4. Packers as the 5. And Seahawks as the 6. I have the Vikings beating the Seahawks in the wild card, and then the Rams beating the Packers in the wild card. I then have Philadelphia beating the Rams. I have the Saints beating the Vikings. And then I have the Saints beating the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. Going on to then the Saints then going to play the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. And I have the Saints winning the Super Bowl this year. All right, well, any questions from the chat? Soccer did come up today. We did mention Carly Lloyd. Or I guess, as anyone outside of America would call it, this is American football. And soccer is football. Maybe. I don't know if everyone says it like that. That might just be... I know soccer in Spanish is football. I don't know. I guess everyone just calls it football everywhere else.
Football.
Yeah. Football. Football. I don't know. it's kind of like footy pajamas, you know. All right, well, if chat doesn't have anything, that's all I got. You know, we will be doing a new show Sunday, so if you want to check that out, be at 11 a.m. Oh, also next Tuesday will be our 11 a.m. Eastern. Yes, next Tuesday will be the first week where we break down the upcoming games for Week 1 of the NFL season. It's finally here, everybody. We are now a week and 2 days away. So close. Shoot. Oh, I almost forgot the most important thing. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate that. Also, if you want to see some good game streaming, check out Seismic Harbor's channel. I think he's streaming tonight. Maybe. I don't know. Are you streaming tonight? He's Dauntless. Ah, yes, playing Dauntless. If you've never heard of it, it's very similar to Monster Hunter. It looks fun to play. Haven't played it myself, but definitely fun to watch. So check it out. Again, thanks for watching, everybody.